It's great to speak with you today, George. Looking forward today to talking about the topic of the contribution of 3D printing to innovation and international business. Before we start, can you provide a brief background of yourself?
Sure. Dustin, thanks for interviewing me. This is an exciting topic. Actually, on topics that are near and dear to my heart. My background actually has two chapters. I'm an international marketer, and I'm also an entrepreneur and innovator. Call me a product developer. The first half of my career was international marketing, primarily in the automotive aftermarket. I worked with some of the leading brands in the United States, Pennzoil, Quaker State, and we had a portfolio of automotive aftermarket brands. I was also the international sales manager for Winter International. We manufactured the club steering wheel lock. So the first half of my career was international marketing, and then I became an entrepreneur, developed a retractable car seat cover, and from beginning to end, commercialized, designed, patented, developed the product, commercialized it, and so I consider myself to be an international marketer and a product developer.
Thanks. My first question is, what is 3D printing?
Well, that question is so broad and dynamic because 3D printing is such a large entity, I'll call it. So I'm going to give you a fraction of what it is. I mean, most of your listeners probably are aware of 3D printing as being an additive manufacturing process as opposed to subtractive manufacturing, where a product can be built layer by layer by layer. So that's common knowledge. When approaching this question, I'm going to look at it in an analogy. I consider it to be a disruptive technology that introduces manufacturing efficiency. And I like to use analogies, and I'm going to use the analogy of snail mail versus email. And basically, 3D printing does to manufacturing what email did to snail mail. And when I say that, I mean it adds, it leapfrogs into a new level of efficiency. So, you know, in the past, we used to use mail, and it was a very physical process. You would manually write a letter, and you would have it touch a number of hands to get to its final destination. And so it was a very physical process, and many hands touched the letter when it was going from point A to point B. And with email, a lot of that was digitized, and that basically added this efficiency where you didn't need to have so many hands physically touching the process. And that's pretty much what is happening with 3D printing. You know, manufacturing in general used to be a very physical, hands-on process where people would use their hands to make a product. And that is changing now with 3D printing because it's becoming more of a cerebral process where a person can make a product digitally, and that adds a huge level of power in manufacturing. So basically, we're really moving from a hands-on process to a mind process, and that's the biggest. Well, it is just one of the bigger disruptive features of 3D printing. I mean, you could literally go and talk about, many other disruptive features, but this is the one that I wanted to highlight in our brief conversation.
And what is the contribution of 3D printing to innovation and international business?
Well, innovation and international business forever have been business activities that were essential, but they were relatively slow. They had an element of risk to them, and they were generally expensive. And they still are, actually. So in business, whether you're innovating or whether you're thinking of going whether you're thinking of taking a product internationally, it's generally a slow process, and it involves a huge amount of risk, and 3D printing is basically reducing these barriers. And again, going back to the topic of manufacturing efficiency, the efficiency of 3D printing is accelerating. For example, in innovation, when companies try to innovate, they try to fail fast. And innovation in the past has been a slow process. I mean, if you can imagine, when I was manufacturing my seat cover, it was a slow process, and it involved a lot of people and logistics issues. So, for example, I would have to send products to Asia, for example, where you are, and the back and forth communication and the opportunity for error and mistakes is magnified in the the subtractive manufacturing process. But by 3D printing being a digital process, all of a sudden you're able to innovate and create prototypes much faster. So things that took months and years can be changed in days and hours. So really, there's a level of efficiency in innovation where I imagine that the level of innovation is going to accelerate, because you can make products and test them and make a prototype within a day or two, and find the errors in your products faster and improve them. So in years past, to innovate something, to create a new product and bring it to the market, but if it took you a year to bring a product to the market, and you brought this brand new product, inevitably there's going to be something that you could improve upon, or there could be a quality issue. Well, now, instead of waiting that whole year to find a quality issue or an improvement possibility, you can find that in days and weeks. And that alone is a huge disruption. So when we're talking about 3D printing, I think one of the biggest benefits to innovation is speed. And since time is money, that can translate very easily into money and profits for companies. And that also translates into lower risk because bad products can be avoided and good products can be brought to market faster. On the international business side, I think we're going to be entering a new view at international business because, again, going to the theme of international business being slow, expensive, and risky. If we just look at logistics issues, the world is always getting smaller, and the reason it's getting smaller is these technological leaps that are provided by the internet. And so if you think of years gone by, when I used to look at getting into a market, one of the biggest considerations was always how much is it going to cost me to bring a product into country X, and what is the least expensive way of getting it there? Because when you're bringing a new product into a country outside of the U.S. or to a new market, there's the logistics cost causes so many different hands to touch a product to get from point A to point B. And as an international marketer, you try to minimize and reduce the number of hands that touch a product as it gets into the market. Well, what 3D printing does, it adds a whole new level of efficiency. Actually, again, we're removing the number of hands that are touching a product during production. And that's extremely powerful because instead of having to consider shipping costs, inland freight costs, and duty costs, the digital delivery of a digital file that gets printed in a foreign country pretty much eliminates a huge amount of cost. In fact, it makes me wonder how commerce is going to deal with duties, for example, because now products are able to be delivered in a country digitally, and so that's going to bring some interesting opportunities and also very new business models. You're going to have new approaches to markets that we haven't even seen yet. But I guess all in all, 3D printing is making the world smaller, and it's bringing manufacturing closer to the consumer. And again, all of this is serving to make international business faster, less expensive, and it's reducing the risk. So in both cases, whether you're talking about innovation or international business, I see 3D printing as accelerating everything, reducing the cost, and I see the world getting smaller and receiving better products faster thanks to 3D printing.
And my last question is, how can companies take the next steps with 3D printing?
At this point in the game, you're probably going to be taking baby steps because 3D printing is, I guess, evolving, and so right now, as a company, a logical first step would be to use either available technology, depending on your budget. If you're into product development, you might either bring in a 3D printer that fits your budget and to make prototypes. That's one way. If you can't afford a 3D printer, depending on the complexity of the products you make, you can outsource, because little by little, there are more companies coming up that are getting into rapid prototyping, and so it's becoming more accessible. And that's something that can be done right now to save money on innovation, to accelerate the speed of innovation. But over time, what you're probably going to see is larger printing service centers located in different parts of the country or parts of the world. And that's going to be an exciting thing. There's companies out there that are developing printing centers worldwide, and that adds some excitement and some reach, and that's only going to grow. But right now, I would say just get access to a 3D printer and test it out. See if it can fit within your internal company innovation process. I think once you dip your foot into the 3D pond, it'll open your eyes, because once you see its capability, you'll start to look for other opportunities, and you'll start to embrace it. But it's a new technology, and it's exciting, and it is going to grow. But right now, I would just basically get access to 3D printing through a service provider or a machine that can fit within your budget to test out prototypes and go from there. See where this evolves. I think in the next 5 years, you're going to see some exciting stuff.
And thanks, George, for sharing today.
Oh, hey, Dustin, thank you. It's always fun to talk about this topic. It's one of these topics that we could talk about for hours and hours on end, because there's so much more to it. I just really just spoke about one aspect of it. There's a lot more, and I encourage your listeners to really take a good close look at it.
Thank you.